Coming up today, at least 77 people have been killed and scores more injured after a truck smashes into a crowd of people celebrating Bastille Day in Nice. Experts say it's highly likely to be the work of an Islamist terror group. President Park Geun-hye extends Korea's deepest sympathies to the people of France after the terror attack in Nice. She's in Mongolia for the ASEM summit to call for greater cooperation between Asia and Europe. First, Korea's free trade deal with Colombia takes effect. It immediately eliminates tariffs on more than 4,000 Korean export products to the South American country. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello, it's noon on Friday, the 15th of July. You're tuned in to our midday newscast here on Arirang TV. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. We begin with the terror attack on a popular vacation spot in the south of France where thousands were gathered to celebrate Bastille Day. A truck ploughed through a waterfront and hit a crowd, killing at least 80 people. Let's get further details from our Hwang Ho-jun at the news centre. Ho-jun, what do we know so far?
Mark, at least 80 people have been killed and more than 100 have been injured, and the death toll is expected to rise as 18 are in critical condition. According to the South Korea's foreign ministry, the Korean government is investigating to confirm if any Korean nationals were caught up in the attack. However, they've been unable to contact 5 Koreans in France as of 10 a.m. Korea time. As you mentioned, thousands of people were gathered at the main promenade in Nice, enjoying the fireworks and music. Then gunshots and a white truck literally mowed people down while accelerating for a distance of about 2 kilometers. Eyewitnesses say the truck was moving at a speed of between 25 to 50 kilometers per hour. The truck finally stopped when police shot out the windscreen and killed the attacker. Now, there's another deeply disturbing aspect to this dreadful attack. We are hearing that local authorities found an arsenal of weapons inside the truck, including firearms, grenades, and explosives, which is why news agencies say this attack could have been even worse. If those weapons had been used, Mark, the death toll could have been potentially run into the hundreds or thousands. French President François Hollande, who was in Mongolia for the ASEM summit meeting, flew back to Paris for crisis talks. He spoke in a national television address less than an hour ago, and he said there's no denying the, quote, terrorist nature of the attack, and swore that nothing will stop France's fight against terrorism. He also extended by 3 months the state of emergency in France that has been in place since the Paris attack last year.
And Ho-jun, we've been looking at the pictures as you speak, and it looks like a war zone. And this happened when the world is still reeling from a series of awful terror attacks during the Ramadan period. Any details on whether this was linked to a terror group?
Well, identity documents belonging to a 31-year-old French-Tunisian man from Nice were found in the truck. Authorities are investigating to see if they match the body found in the vehicle. No claim of responsibility has been made by a terrorist organization, but there are plenty of hints pointing to Islamic extremist groups such as ISIS. As a matter of fact, ISIS supporters erupted in celebration on social media as news of the attack started to filter through. Also, the south of France, a very popular holiday spot for people around the world, has a sizable population of extremists who are believed to have traveled to and from Syria and Iraq. Although a massacre by a single vehicle is unprecedented, ISIS has encouraged its followers to use such tactics before. Given the sheer scale of carnage and the discovery of sophisticated weaponry, experts are saying it's highly likely the attack was pre-planned and organized. They say it would be difficult for an individual with no direct links to terror groups to have such an arsenal of weapons, especially in Europe, which is why experts are saying that rather than this being a so-called lone wolf attack, there must have been a network pulling the strings behind the scenes. Mark?
Thank you, Ho-jun, for that report. Now, we're going to go over to Ulaanbaatar, where the 11th ASEM summit has kicked off in the Mongolian capital. Understandably, Asian and European leaders are also in shock over the atrocity in Nice, which prompted the French president, as Ho-Jun just mentioned, to leave immediately. President Park Geun-hye delivered her message to the 51 member nations this morning. For the details, we're now going to connect to our presidential office correspondent Song Ji-son, who is travelling with the president. Ji-son, a somber start to the summit.
That's right, Mark. President Park Geun-hye began her speech by expressing her deepest condolences to victims and their families in Nice, stressing that terror attacks cannot be tolerated under any circumstances. As the first speaker at the first session, President Park noted the challenges facing the world, like extreme violence, terror threats, and climate change. She said the ASEM group must take a lead role in global cooperation and form a deeper transnational partnership. In particular, she underscored the need to use ASEM as a platform to enhance economic cooperation. Despite the rising trade of trade protectionism, President Park stressed that ASEM must lead open trade, giving greater room for growth for developing nations, which also narrows the economic gap between nations. President Park also suggested holding an ASEM financial ministers meeting in Korea next year for concrete discussions on how innovation and creativity can foster growth. She wrapped up by noting the need to improve and upgrade the sessions in a more interactive and efficient way. Mark?
And Ji-son, President Park has a very busy day lined up. She's going to be holding bilateral talks on the sidelines of the summit as well.
That is correct. President Park took some time for one-on-one talks during and between the sessions, as 3 bilateral summits are in her itinerary today. President Park first sat down with Laos Prime Minister Thongloun Sisoulith, followed by talks with Vietnamese Prime Minister Nguyen Xuan Phuc. Meeting with those leaders for the first time as they both took office in April this year, President Park asked for their cooperation to strengthen bilateral partnerships while asking for their support for administration's North Korea policies. In just a few minutes, the South Korean leader will also speak with European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker and European Council President Donald Tusk. President Park wants to reinforce all strategic partnership with the European Union at this first meeting following Britain's vote last month to exit the bloc. I'll be back with the latest from the ASEM summit throughout the day. Back to you in Seoul.
So then, what exactly is the Asia-Europe meeting and how has Korea's role changed on the ASEM stage over the years? Our Kim Jong-soo has more on the summit that marks its 20th year today.
For the past 2 decades, ASEM has worked as a platform for interregional dialogue and cooperation between Asian and European countries, with political, economic, social, cultural, and educational issues in its agenda. The first summit meeting was held in 1996 in Bangkok, Thailand, with a total of 26 partners. Today, the forum nearly doubled in size. ASEM currently has 53 partners, 51 countries including Korea, Australia, India, and China, and the EU and the ASEAN secretariats. And Korea, a founding member of ASEM, has been a committed partner since 1996. Korea held the 3rd ASEM summit meeting in the year 2000 in Seoul. In 2008, the 8th ASEM Finance Ministers meeting was hosted in Jeju-do Island. Most recently, just about a month ago, the city of Gwangju hosted the 7th ASEM Culture Ministers meeting. Korea will again host an ASEM meeting for educational ministers in 2017. According to political experts, Korea's role in leading international dialogue is unique, to say the least, especially as a country taking the role of a mediator between industrialized and developing countries. Also, with its long-standing multilateral relations with neighboring countries and the EU, Korea has been able to provide a unique insight to the meeting. For the 11th summit meeting, which kicks off on Friday, ASEM leaders are set to gather in Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia, not only to celebrate the forum's 20th anniversary, but also discuss and sum up its past accomplishments and plan its goals for the future. Kim Jong-soo, Arirang News.
So Mongolia, the host of this year's ASEM summit, maintains a very special relationship with Korea since forging diplomatic ties more than 2 decades ago. Our Connie Kim was in Mongolia to take a closer look at the friendship of the two countries.
Mongolia has undergone rapid economic and political growth since the country's democratic revolution in 1990. And Korea has been a model nation for Mongolia. Fast forward 26 years since forging diplomatic ties, Korea's presence here is nearly everywhere to be seen. Over the decades-long relationship, it's not an exaggeration to say K-pop is what bridged the two nations. These K-pop fans spare no time to memorize the Korean lyrics and dance routines of their favorite K-pop tunes, which are now for them part of their life. And these young Mongolians' passion for Korean culture is what facilitated exchanges on a people-to-people level, which ultimately led to working at a higher level to address an issue every Mongolian is deeply concerned about: desertification. These dunes cover about 40% of Mongolia's territory, and even worse, the sand flies across northeastern China, reaching the Korean peninsula. Korea has joined the fight against desertification with Mongolia, for one, getting involved in a 10-year Greenbelt project in the Gobi Desert. And second, actively rehabilitating mines that act as the biggest cause of desertification. These are just a few cases that have cemented bilateral relations, leaving the door open for more potential growth culturally, socially, and economically.
Now you can watch our special feature piece, Making Mongolia's Moments, by our very own Connie Kim in its entirety by tuning in to Arirang TV. Later on this Friday afternoon, the programme starts at 4:30 p.m. Korea time. Now, in other news, Deputy Foreign Ministers from South Korea, the United States and Japan have just wrapped up trilateral talks in Hawaii. The meeting comes as tensions are running high in the region over North Korea and territorial disputes in the South China Sea. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Antony Blinken hosted South Korean First Vice Foreign Minister Im Sung-nam and Japanese Vice Foreign Minister Shinsuke Sugiyama. At the start of the meeting, U.S. Vice President Joe Biden delivered remarks underscoring the importance of security cooperation between the three nations. In recent days, North Korea has threatened physical retaliation in protest of the U.S. sanctions on leader Kim Jong-un and the decision to deploy the THAAD missile defense system to South Korea. The talks also come after an international panel rejected China's territorial claims to most of the South China Sea. Russia's implementation plan on North Korea sanctions has been made public. According to Voice of America on Friday, the UN has revealed Moscow's report on how it plans to follow through with UN Security Council Resolution 2270. But it was found to be a mere 1 page long. In fact, if you exclude the introduction, the actual content is just 3 sentences. The report says Russia's central bank notified other local banks of sanctions concerning asset freezes and banning financial support to Pyongyang. It says that until President Putin's final announcement, sanctions are to be abided by within Russian territory. VOA notes that compared to other permanent members of the UN Security Council, Russia's report is very short indeed. The US and British reports were 18 and 9 pages long, respectively. Now, some good news for the Korean economy, because trade barriers between Korea and Colombia have been significantly scaled back, paving the way for Korean exporters to get a stronger foothold in South America's third largest market. For more on the latest trade deal that should provide a much-needed boost for Korea's slowing exports, Kim Min-ji reports.
Korea has become the first Asian country to ink a free trade pact with Colombia. Expectations are high that the deal could provide a much-needed shot in the arm for Korea's exports, which have slowed every month since January last year. Colombia is considered one of the most promising markets in South America, with the third largest population in the region and fourth largest GDP, not to mention its abundance of natural resources. Korea is Colombia's 9th biggest trading partner, and bilateral trade stood at over $2.1 billion in 2014. While growing, bilateral trade accounts for less than 1% of Korea's total trade, but that could soon be a different story. Under the free trade agreement, tariffs on roughly 4,400 Korean export products to Colombia will be eliminated immediately, while tax will be lowered for almost 2,800 goods. Over the next 10 years, duties will be scrapped on 96.1% of products from Colombia and 96.7% of products from Korea. Korea's key export products like cars, which are currently hit with a heavy tax rate of 35%, will be phased out gradually, while duties on promising products like cosmetics will be gone in 7 to 10 years. Korea was able to safeguard vulnerable sectors like beef and rice.
Korea mainly exports industrial products to Colombia, while it imports primary products, so the two countries have a complementary relationship. And in that sense, the FTA is expected to give the trade volume a lift. The FTA will give Korea price competitiveness over its competitors like Japan and China, which have yet to ink deals.
On top of that, experts say as products subject to immediate tax exemption are much wider in scope in comparison to that of deals Korea has with other countries. Positive effects will show up sooner than expected. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
Now, shares of Korean tech giant Naver's Japan-based messaging company Line have risen significantly since its IPO debut on Thursday. The shares were initially priced at $32.84, but rose by 27% to $41.58, peaking at $44.50. The company has raised $1.1 billion with the public offering so far. Line's core messaging service lets users communicate through free instant messaging and make voice and video calls. The company has a monthly user base of 218 million people, with the 4 largest markets being Japan, Indonesia, Taiwan and Thailand. Its main competitors include Facebook's WhatsApp and WeChat from Tencent Holdings. Well, that's all we have for now on this Friday afternoon here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you as always for watching. You can find more news on our website. If we don't see you, have a great weekend. Goodbye.